Trayvon Martin in Sanford, Florida, which has sparked protests and re-examining of profiling and racial issues nationwide, we're also talking about how it impacts us here and what we can do. And I want to ask Robert Grace, just quickly, because we're in our moments here, what should be happening next with Trayvon Martin? We've seen a smear campaign started in the media, against Trayvon, a dead child, and we have seen the family coming out, the family of Zimmerman coming out in the press and seemingly trying their case in the media. But then we've seen the tape from the police station, which doesn't seem to show Zimmerman with any blood or any injuries or anything anywhere. And so it seems like a history trial. What should be happening next as we dial back and let justice take its course? What should we be looking for?
It is a complete investigation, as I said earlier. So that means, as Connie Rice alluded to, dialing back a little bit and let the politicism die down, because you don't want witnesses tailoring what they have to say based upon what they've been hearing in the news media. So, for example, you don't want witnesses saying, well, I saw Martin on top of Zimmerman, because they've been hearing in the media that we've got to set up a situation where Zimmerman had a right to do what he did.
Because he's claiming self-defense, or it seems that that's what he's
right. And Connie Rice alluded to this earlier. The Florida law doesn't say that you can be the aggressor and take advantage of this stand your ground law. Everybody should know that. In the 22 states that have this particular law, none of those laws say that you can go after somebody with a gun and then claim self-defense. You can't do that. But in this particular case, we got to look for a lot of things, and it's all got to be done in a thorough investigation. What does the coroner's report say?
Well, just really quickly, because I know we're tight on time. You talk about a thorough investigation. There was Zimmerman was not tested to see whether he was under the influence of drugs and alcohol. His clothes were not checked. It seemed like in some of these things it's going to be too late for a thorough investigation. They did a toxicology on the child, but not on the perpetrator. It's just how do you get a thorough investigation in that kind of case?
The State Attorney General's office promised that they were going to go back and do a step-by-step investigation. And so you're absolutely right. A lot of things that should have been done on the scene and in the days after were never done. For example, they never talked to or got the cell records of Trayvon Martin immediately to find out who he was talking to at the time, and therefore missed the fact that he was on the phone with his girlfriend at the time that the incident occurred.
And did not interview her.
Yeah. So you really have to keep up the pressure in terms of making sure that the State Attorney General's office does a thorough investigation and then proceeds to a grand jury, put people under oath, and then you're going to find out exactly what occurred. Not only in terms of this investigation, but I would like to see what did the Sanford police do.
Well,
because that's what you're talking about in terms of procedure. If they didn't do things properly in terms of their investigation, then the state of Florida needs to be looking at that police department and why they don't do that.
But two really quick questions. The Sanford police wanted to charge Zimmerman, and the state attorneys were the ones that denied that, number one. Number two, the NAACP said last Friday that the state attorney, Angela Corey, has been a big supporter of Stand Your Ground, that she's famous for prosecuting minors, especially black children. So that's where it comes to, do we have to rely on the feds here? I mean,
no, well, there's two things going on here, and I'm sure the other panelists will speak to this. One is the people in the state of Florida need to know that their local people are going to be on top of this, because if they do not, you can't run to the federal government every time somebody gets killed in a local jurisdiction. The people of Sanford, Florida, need to know that their police department works for everybody in that city.
Connie Rice, your take on this.
I agree with everything that Prosecutor Grace just said. In addition, understand there's plenty of evidence to be collected, even though the local cops completely messed up. They didn't collect the shoes, they didn't do the test, they didn't, But on the other hand, we don't know exactly what happened in that police station. So let's let that investigation go forward. Now, the state's attorney, let me say this. the reason that that Dominique's very justifiable objections to the bias in the local police, they're probably not going to play out the way they thought they were going to play out because of the protests and the national attention. I think the game has changed because the public uproar and because of the Martin family's very smart strategy of saying, I want justice, I'm insisting on an investigation. Now, real quick, the arrest will come. You want the arrest after you've got the facts, okay? They're getting the facts now. So let it play out a little. There'll be plenty of time if the wrong result gets done and justice is not done, we can then resume, okay? No justice, no peace. But right now, let the legal process go forward. If you don't, let me tell you what's going to happen. We're then going to take the place as the vigilantes and we'll turn the tide. You don't have to like it, that's the way it will go. There are a lot of things that we can do. Number one, there are a lot of things that we can do other than be angry. We have got a lot more training to do with our cops. Community policing, when the cops know the folks in the community, you reduce the chance of our kids getting shot. When you do the stuff, when Brian Dunn said put your hands up and be polite, he wasn't joking. We have to teach our kids how to survive. We also have to make the community understand, look folks, let's not just get angry about this shooting. Let's get angry, hold on. Let's get strategic and smart about the fact. Listen to this fact. Can you please let me finish? Yes. Listen to this fact. We have 6,000 unsolved murders in South Bureau. 6,000. We used to have 8,000, so they're making progress. We need to be upset, just as upset on black killing as we are.
Regulate.
We're talking about police officers because many times that's where these situations occur. This particular person was a wannabe neighborhood watch. Don't these people have background checks? He's got domestic violence cases. He's got assault against a police officer. How is this guy on a neighborhood watch? You know, so I guess there's three questions there. You want to start, Attorney Dunn?
Well, I think that what you have with Zimmerman is, this is a guy that, neighborhood watch aside, he shouldn't have been walking around with a gun. I mean, with a gun is an accident waiting to happen. And when you have a law such as the Stand Your Ground law, it essentially gives an individual, a private citizen, the legal authority to shoot and kill someone and then later claim that he's acting in self-defense. If you've seen as many officer-involved shootings as I have seen, what you see most of the time is there's really only one surviving witness, and it's the one that killed the other person. The victim never has an opportunity to tell his side of the story. So what you have with Zimmerman is an individual who, as Ms. Rice has said, attacked, confronted, pursued, and then later had what we know as a pretextual, self-serving version of events. And we see that with law enforcement all too often. Because what happens is, as I indicated, you've got a shooting in a dark place, usually at night. An individual that's killed may have a criminal record, may not, but you'll never get to hear his side of the story.
Attorney Dunn, I'm against the clock here. I do want to say that, you know, right now the tide of public opinion is in the favor of Trayvon Martin and his family. And I think it's important that it stays that way because it is across the board and it is creating pressure. And that's why there's a smear campaign. And that's why CNN keeps talking about, you know, bounties and crap like that. As long as we follow the example of Trayvon's mother and take the high ground while maintaining constant, vigilant pressure, we maintain the upper hand in getting justice. I absolutely agree with that. I'm going to ask John Mack. some changes that came from Governor Brown, some changes in our own policy. I would like to see background checks for all neighborhood watch. We know they're not supposed to carry guns, but what about, you said there's some local things that have come out of these type of situations that point to progress.
I would just remind us briefly that if we do take action, intelligent action, kind of makes a good point. It's all right. It's understandable that we get emotional around issues like this, but the important thing is that we be strategic and be smart. Let me give you a couple of real examples of change that took place within the Los Angeles Police Department due to well-organized, effective pressure. Some of you may remember the Stanley Miller flashlight beating incident. When Stanley Miller, a black man, was hit in the head, beaten by a police officer, LAPD officer, with a flashlight, a big flashlight, which should have been used just to illuminate so they can see where they're going and what they're doing, as opposed to using it as a weapon. As a result of constant pressure that was applied by a number of us, including people in this audience, the police commission and the chief ultimately changed the policy so that the flashlight now is much smaller. It's something you can hold in your hand, and so you can turn the light on so if they're in a dark place they can see where they're going rather than using it to beat somebody over the head. That's a direct result of pressure that was applied, consistent and intelligent pressure.
The Devin Brown case also got changed in policy.
The Devin Brown incident that has been talked about. You remember the vehicle was moving back as a result of our decision, number one, to find out a policy, but beyond that, as a result of constant, persistent pressure that came from the community, along with the police commission itself, now the policy is that a moving vehicle can no longer be viewed as a weapon. Cops are now instructed to get out of the way of the car rather than pull out your gun and shoot inside the car. So, folk, and I know some of you, got a little uptight and were yelling and back at giving Constance some pushback, but she makes an important point. It's important that we know when to hold, know when to fold. Apply pressure, but know when you've got a victory on hand too. So I would just say, in conclusion, it's important for all of us to remain engaged, involved, and participate in an effective and intelligent manner, and we can ultimately, I think, achieve the goals that we all see.
We're at time to come. You also mentioned as well that we're going to possibly teaching the incoming officers some of this history, like the Devin Brown case, so that we can try to keep history from repeating itself. That's something you're working on, right, with the police department? Yes. Okay, we have to go to our next chapter. We're happy to go to our next chapter. Coming to the podium now, we have Minister Tony Muhammad and Nation of Islam and Pastor Louis Logan from the Real Church, who have also been active on these issues. They'll be leading us in a discussion on solutions. I want to thank our panel.